Hi, good afternoon. My name is Monique Insiamponsa and welcome to today's lesson. Today we are looking at the literature review, and this is our outline. We'll be looking at what is literature review, the purpose of literature review, types of literature review, how to conduct a literature review, and the composition of the literature review. Literature review is simply a comprehensive summary of previous research or studies on a topic. So it means that it's a summary that has to be understood on a particular topic and researches that have been conducted by people. And it serves as a basis for research in the academic field. That is to say that if I'm conducting a study in a particular area, I want to look at the literature in that particular topic, what people have done on that topic, and that will serve as my basis for research in the academic field. And we are bringing our minds back onto the fact that we have looked at deficiencies in the literature. So meaning that before you conduct a study, you do a kind of literature review. You look at the literature on that particular topic, the deficiencies in that literature, and that serves as a basis for research in that particular field. And so literature review builds on the fact that knowledge is accumulative. Knowledge is accumulative, and others can add on to what other researchers have investigated already. What we mean by that is that knowledge is never stagnant. There is always an increase in knowledge as researches are being done. And so we build on what others have done, under what other researchers have accumulated in that particular field, and then we investigate in an area that is new. So that is literature review, and it builds on the fact that knowledge is accumulative. Knowledge is always increasing and growing, and new things are coming up. So we build on what other researchers have investigated already. Purpose of literature review. If we are bringing literature review into our dissertation or thesis, then what purpose is the literature review coming to serve? Of what impact is the literature review in our work? So it shares with the reader the results of other studies that are closely related to the one being undertaken. That is to say that if I'm doing a research on drug abuse or teenage pregnancy or on experience of prostitutes, then I want to share literature on what others have already done in that particular field for my readers to know that this has been done elsewhere, probably in Nigeria, in Africa. A study of this sort has been conducted in the USA. A study of this nature has been conducted in Asia, in the Philippines. And so it brings out studies that are closely related to what is being undertaken. And it relates a study to the larger ongoing dialogue in the literature. And it fills in gaps extending prior studies. That is to say, if there is a lot of study being done, in the literature, lots of studies are coming up in a particular field, your literature review will relate what you are doing to the larger dialogue in the literature, filling in the gaps and extending prior studies. And it provides a framework for establishing the importance of the study, as well as a benchmark for comparing the results with other findings. And this is very significant when we are looking at quantitative studies. So your literature review will provide a framework by which you establish the importance of the study, and it will serve as a benchmark for comparing the results with other findings. It also helps the researcher to learn from others and stimulate new ideas. You learn from what others have done, and it brings about new ideas as to what you would like to look at. A review tells what others have found so that a researcher can benefit from the efforts of others. We all benefit from one another as researchers. So doing a review will tell what others have found and what you can benefit from their efforts. Literature review also integrates and summarizes what is known in an area. It pulls together and synthesizes different results from different settings, from different target populations with different results. And as it brings them together, it integrates the knowledge in that particular field, in that particular area. So a good review will point out areas in which prior studies agree, disagree, and major questions which remain. So it will bring out areas where studies have agreed, where results were the same, and where they disagree, where there were major disagreements in the findings, and the major question that remains. For example, if you are doing a review on ownership of data, scholarly academic databases, all right, by libraries, you would realize that a lot of studies have been done in that area, but the major question that remains is, must libraries have full ownership, perpetual ownership of these scholarly academic databases, which have a lot of research articles that have been conducted? And it will be an area where someone would want to investigate. It also collects what is known up to a point in time and indicates the direction for future research, what we have known up to this point, and if other researches are being done in that same field, then which direction must that research take? That is another purpose of literature review. Now we have types of literature review. We have integrative review, and this is a very common type. The author presents and summarizes the current state of knowledge on a topic. So the author highlights agreements and disagreements within the topic. So with a particular topic, if, for example, we are looking at a topic in the banking industry, for example, if we're looking at something that looks at automated banking system, okay, an integrative review will bring out and summarize what is the state of that particular topic in the banking industry. And the author will highlight where researchers have agreed that yes, it is good to have automated systems in the bank, and where there are other disagreements within the topic. And that is integrative review. It brings out all the agreements and the disagreements within the topic. Then we have methodological review. As the name suggests, we are looking at the methodology that have been done, that have been used in conducting certain research. Okay, so it's a specialized type of integrative review in which the author compares and evaluates the relative methodological strengths of various studies. That is to say that for a particular topic, if someone has utilized quantitative methodology in conducting that particular research and others have used qualitative, the review would want to bring out the strength of that quantitative studies and the weakness of quantitative studies as compared to the strength of the qualitative study and the weakness. So it shows how different methodologies account for different results. So it could be that two persons conduct research on drug abuse in the same locality. One used a quantitative approach, the other used a qualitative approach. By comparing and doing a methodological review, we'll find out that probably the one who used a qualitative research design has brought out more in-depth knowledge concerning the same topic, and the results are different for the same thing, for the same sample size and the same population. So such a review will bring out the strength of the qualitative study and bring out the strength of the quantitative study. Then we have context review, and it's a common type of review in which the author links a specific study to a larger body of knowledge. It continues or builds on developing line of thought or study. And it often appears at the beginning of a research report, where you have the study introduced by situating it within a broader framework. An example I can cite is the literature about a problem. When you are defending or writing out your problem statement, you cite literature about the problem, what others have looked at about the problem, and you bring the literature around the problem. So it means that in context review, based on what you are looking at, you bring out specific studies. You link your specific study to the larger body of knowledge. So it builds on and develops that same line of thought or a different line of thought in that particular area. Now we have historical review, and it's a specialized review in which the author traces an issue over time. It can be merged with a theoretical or methodological review to show how a concept, a theory, or research method developed over time. So what we mean to say is that it traces an issue over time. So I can do a retrospective review, literature review on drug abuse, and trace how it has emerged. It has emerged over time to show the concept, the theories that have come out of studying drug abuse, the research method that has developed over time. And this all has to do with historical review. So it's a specialized review in which the author traces an issue over time. Before we move on to how to conduct literature review, I would like to add that for our kind of study, as researchers doing academic research, the integrated review is what we use most of the time. Most of the time, we conduct integrative review. So we bring out the current state of knowledge on the topic, and we highlight the agreements and disagreements within the topic. So in conducting literature review, looking out for literature around your topic, you identify the keywords in your study. If you are looking at a topic like information-seeking behavior of pastors, then you know that the keyword in your study, information-seeking behavior and then pastors. So having looked at that, you know that if you are searching for information, then information-seeking behavior will be one keyword, will be some of the major keywords you'll be using, and looking out for areas where people have conducted studies on information-seeking behavior of pastors. So you use the keywords to locate literature related to your topic. Usually what happens is that most times people may use the whole topic to find out literature related to your topic. But once you identify the keywords and the synonymous words that can be used to replace them, then you can use them to search and conduct literature review, to search for literature related to your study. So you can find out about 50 research articles that relate to your topic. Okay, and having found that, you skim through and choose the most relevant to your topic and objectives. So you write summaries of the relevant ones as they will form the major part of your literature review, and you compile them under the major variables in your work. So for example, we are looking at information-seeking behavior of pastors. We know and realize that information-seeking is one key area, is one of our keywords. So under that, we are looking at information, we are looking at the seeking behavior and all that. So having looked at that, we looked at all works that form a major part, that are most relevant to our topics. We can go and find out works that have conducted information-seeking behavior of church leaders or information-seeking behavior of church workers, and is closely related to our work. And that would help us compile them under the major variables in our work. So a good summary of a journal article will include the following. If you want to know that you have really made a good summary of a journal article, Then you should have mentioned the problem being addressed. You state the central purpose of the study, and you briefly state information about the sample population and subject. Then you review the key results that relate to the study. If the review is methodological in nature, you point out the methodological flaws in the study. So let's say you find a journal article on a work like information seeking behavior of pastors. You bring out the problem. What is the problem? The problem is that pastors do not seek information, or pastors rely on their congregation to give them information about things happening in society. So that may be the problem being addressed. Okay, the problem someone has identified. So the purpose of the study would have been to find out the information-seeking behavior of pastors in Ghana or of pastors in Accra. And probably the setting will be pastors of charismatic churches. So you state the information about the sample population and subject. So a good summary of a journal article will include the problem being addressed, and as we were saying, we are looking at information-seeking behavior of pastors, of charismatic pastors. So you state the problem, which is that the problem is these pastors may not go out for information, but they depend on information being given to them by their congregation. So the purpose of the study was to find out the information-seeking behavior of charismatic pastors in Accra. So that one has brought out the sample population, which is charismatic pastors, because we have pastors of different denominations, and the subject being studied. Then we review the results, which we may say that the result is that pastors have an active information-seeking behavior, or they have a passive information-seeking behavior. And we review the methodology. Probably the person utilized qualitative approach, which means that interviews were conducted. So you bring out the nature and the flaws in the study, and that would be a good literature review. Now, in our dissertation, we are looking at the composition of literature review that forms a whole chapter in a research dissertation. You have an introduction which tells the reader about the sections to be found in the literature review. Then you review one topic about the independent variable, and you review another topic about the dependent variable. So if I bring out a topic like search engines and their use and its effect on students' use of academic library resources, then for my introduction, I'll say that this is the literature review, and that's the purpose of the literature review. And in my literature review, you'll find topics like the concept of search engines, you'll find topics about academic library resources, and you find topics under students' use of academic library resources. You find a topic under students' use of search engines. Then together you'll find a topic about the effects of search engines on students' use of academic library resources. So you review scholarly literature that relates to both the independent and dependent variable. After reviewing scholarly literature that talks about your independent variable and talks about your dependent variable, after that you provide a summary of the review, highlighting the most important studies captured under the major themes in review. So for us, and in the literature review of a dissertation, you should have an introduction, you should review topic about the independent variable, about the dependent variable, and then scholarly literature that relates to both the independent and dependent variable. After that, you give a summary of the review, highlighting your most important studies captured under the major themes in the review. So for example, we have information needs and seeking behavior of pastors. Section 1 would have an introduction which will give out the brief outline of what to look at in that literature review. Then we have section 2, which is looking at information needs, which is one variable. Then we have information seeking behavior, which is another variable. Okay. Then in section 4, we have information needs and seeking behavior of pastors. Then section 5, we have the summary of the literature. So that is an example of literature review, the composition of literature review. Now we are looking at literature in qualitative study, having come to understand that the methodological assumptions or the philosophical assumptions for both qualitative and quantitative study are different. Then we should know that definitely certain aspects of those studies will be different. So in the qualitative study, the literature must be used in a manner that is consistent with the methodological assumption. So if we have decided we are doing a qualitative study, then we must know that in a qualitative study, the literature is used inductively. It doesn't direct the research question. Rather, the literature is used to support the findings after it has been done. So most qualitative studies are exploratory in nature. We don't want to go in based on the literature that is on the topic, but we want to explore and see what we will come out with. It is assumed that much has not been written about the topic, so even the little that has been written about the topic will be used in an inductive manner so that we don't direct the nature or research questions in the qualitative study. So for qualitative studies, the researcher seeks to listen to informants and to build a picture based on their ideas. Literature in a qualitative study can be placed in the introduction to create a backdrop to the problem. It can also be placed in a separate section, similar to quantitative design. Then the researcher may incorporate related literature in the final section, where it is used to compare and contrast the findings of the research. So after you are done conducting your research, you compare your findings with the literature in the research for qualitative studies. Then literature in quantitative studies. Quantitative studies include a substantial amount of literature to provide directions to the objectives and the research questions. It is used to introduce the problem, and it is also described in detail in a different section. Quantitative studies depend a lot on the literature, and it provides directions to the objectives and the research questions. It is typically advanced as the basis for comparing with results to be found in the study. So a good literature review in a quantitative study will ensure that when the results are being discussed, the researcher would have a lot of findings, a lot of literature to disagree or to agree with his or her findings. So in this lesson, we have looked at literature review, what literature review is, the purpose of literature review, how to conduct or compose the composition of a literature review in a dissertation, and we have looked at the use of the literature in quantitative and qualitative studies. Thank you very much. The name is still Monique Insiamponsa, and we are done for this lesson.